All right, I'm going to go ahead and start. Welcome to RootsTech, Day 3. How are you holding up? Having a good time? I have a lot of information to cover today, and I'm going to throw it at you fairly quickly. I could literally spend at least an hour on every one of these topics, but I'm going to give you an overview today. So I want you to kind of relax and try not to take too many notes. That's what the crib sheet is for, and that's what our free ebook is for. And you can always come and ask me questions at my booth afterwards. I'll give you directions there, and happy to answer any questions that you have. I will try to leave a few minutes for questions at the end, so if you want to hold those to the end. I'm Allison Taylor, and my husband Tom and I have a company called Pictures and Stories. And we create family history and life history books and videos, and we have the best job in the world. If you want to come see our booth, we are approximately 4 miles to the south of this classroom. Booth number 225, we're right next to the media hub, so we would love to come and talk to you afterwards. This is our 5th year presenting at RootsTech, and it's something we look forward to every year. The best thing about my job is that I get to spend time reading other people's stories and looking at their fabulous, wonderful pictures. We really enjoy what we do. But it's taken me a long time to learn a lot of the things that I'm going to be throwing at you today. So I'm hoping that I can give you some good basic information that will prevent you from having to make a lot of the mistakes that I've made along the way. Has anybody seen the movie or read the book, The Monuments Men? Fantastic book. The movie was pretty fun too. This book is about a group of men led by a guy named George Stout who saved 60,000 priceless European works of art from destruction at the hands of the Nazis during World War II, in a Volkswagen, no less, that they stole from a German soldier. Fantastic book. So, gentlemen, here is your chance to be the George Stout of your family. Ladies, you're welcome. Anybody have piles that look like this in their house? How many of you have piles like this that you have actually inherited from someone else? They're not even your piles, okay? So what do you think is going to happen to those piles if these piles get handed down to your children? Right, yeah, so that's why we're here, and that's why I'm talking about this today. So, what do we do with all this stuff? This is also, we have a big sign that says it's on the top of our booth, so you can see it from across the expo hall, so that's how you can find us today. How much better would it be if you could hand down something that looked like this? You've got your files well digitized, your important originals preserved in archival boxes, and you've got them all shared up in the cloud where other people can get them. That's what we're talking about today. We can use these files then to help tell our stories and to tell our ancestor stories so we can keep them alive. These are our monuments. These are the monuments that it's up to us to save them. So when I was a kid, this is what technology looked like. That is my little brother, loving on some analog there. Lone Ranger was his favorite. Those of us in this room, no matter what your age is, we are the bridge generation between analog and digital. So it's up to us to save these artifacts so that they can last into future generations. It's a big responsibility. Okay, do you remember when we used to go and get your prints from the drugstore, and you get your prints and you get your negatives, okay? And then you put them in a shoebox, put them in the closet, and you would put these away and keep them safe so that if you needed more or if anything happened to your prints, you knew where they were. Things are a little bit more complicated in the digital world now. But the concept is the same. What we want to do is we want to create a high-quality digital master of each photo, and we're going to put it away someplace safe, and we're going to make copies of it to be able to use for various different purposes. That's our goal. There are a lot of different ways and means to do this, a lot of software, a lot of technology. What I'm going to be telling you today are some really basic concepts that aren't tied to any particular software or any particular program. or platform. They're things that you can use throughout, no matter what you're doing. I ran across a quote from the vice president of Google that I thought was a little bit disturbing. He says, "We think that digitizing things will preserve them, but if we're not careful, those digital versions may be even worse than the originals. We stand to lose a lot of our history." Unfortunately, these great digital tools that we have are designed to be easy and fun to use, but in creating a true archive, there are some things that can kind of set us up for failure. So those are the pitfalls that we're going to be talking about today that I want to help you avoid. These are our 7 deadly sins. They don't look very deadly, do they? We've got, I'm going to be spending the most time on the first 2, Skimpy and Smushy up here. And then we'll kind of go through the last 5 pretty quickly. This is confused, this is incognito, poof, luggage, and piggy. So I had to give them all names, right? Okay, we'll start with Skimpy here. Skimpy wants to make sure that we don't have enough pixels in our photo. So what is a pixel? Every digital image is made up of pixels. Whether it's scanned, a print that you scanned, or whether it's been captured on a digital device, it's made up of little tiny squares of color that create the photograph. And generally, the more pixels you have, the higher quality your photograph is going to be. This is what it looks like when you don't have enough pixels. And we've all seen things that look like this, right? What most people don't know is that in order to print something and make it look decent, you need 4 times as many pixels as you do to have something look good on a screen. So we're going to talk quite a bit about that today. We want to make sure that when we're creating our digital masters, that we have plenty of pixels that they can be used for anything. All right, this is a picture of my mom, and I think this was taken about the same year that the movie West Side Story came out. Looking glamorous and gorgeous. This is what it looks like when you zoom in to the extreme. This on the right is just this little tiny section of her scarf. You can see here the individual squares of color. That's what the pixels look like when you zoom in. We want a lot of those. But how do we know? How many pixels do we need for a good quality image? When we're scanning, especially, scanning our old analog stuff and putting it into digital format. How do we know that we're setting our scanners correctly so that we can get the quality of image that we need? So I just wanted to, in case there's anybody in here who's traumatized by numbers, just take a deep breath. Again, I'll just say, just kind of let these concepts wash over you and try to understand them without, if you spend the whole time writing down everything I say, you're going to miss a lot of it. So just try to relax a little bit, and I promise you that whatever you really need to know, like the basic things, I will stop and say, write this down. This is important, but I'm just giving you an overall understanding. You can also refer to your sheet or download the ebook. First of all, you don't need an expensive scanner to get a good quality photo. Most of the scanners, the flatbed scanners that you already have at home, are going to be perfectly fine. You can get a good quality. We have a little Canon very small flatbed scanner that we put in a suitcase and we take it with us when we travel. And I think it costs about $75 right now. And it takes really great scans if you know how to use it properly. So that's the key, is to make sure that you get the settings correct, but you don't need to go and spend a lot of money on a new scanner. Okay, so professional archivists recommend for a digital master that we have 4,000 pixels on the longest side of an image. Okay, that means that you have a picture, you need 4,000 little squares of data that go all the way across on the longest side. Okay, this is a print that I scanned. That is my daughter in Scotland quite a number of years ago. She now has a son who's about this age. So I would scan my photo so that I have 4,000 pixels there on the longest side. I can blow this up to a nice, good sized print from that digital master and it'll look great. So we know that print needs the most number of pixels. So when we scan, we want to scan to a print standard, because if we scan towards a print standard, we will have plenty of pixels for anything else that we would want to use it for. So any digital device, we're going to have more than enough pixels than we need. This, I could blow this up on a monitor 4 times this size and it would look perfectly fine. If we could just tell our scanner that we wanted every image that we scan to be 4,000 pixels on the longest side, that would be so easy. Unfortunately, most scanner drivers don't work that way. What they want to know is how many pixels do you want per inch? And that's where the math gets a little more complicated. And just also to tell you, DPI stands for dots per inch. It means the same thing as PPI, pixels per inch. So if you see DPI or PPI, it's the same thing. It's just kind of a holdover from print technology. Okay? Resolution is the word that refers to the number of pixels per inch. And that varies. How those pixels are used varies. Like every different electronic device will use those pixels differently. But as long as you have 4,000, you're going to pretty much be safe for just about anything, or close to that. Okay, and usually, this is what it's going to look like in your scanner. You'll have a little pull-down menu that gives you numbers to choose from, and that is how you're going to tell it how many pixels per inch you want to scan. Now, the gold standard, considered the gold standard for print, is that you want to have, to get a decent print, 300 pixels for every inch of this photo. Okay? 200 is going to be still give you a pretty decent result, but if you start getting too much lower than this, you're going to start being able to see some pixelization in your photo, and it won't look quite as sharp. Just by way of comparison, the average computer screen has 92 or 72 to 96 pixels per inch. Some have more than that, but that's kind of the standard for computers nowadays. So, you know, Marsha might look really good on the screen here, but if you try to print her out, she may not look so good. Marsha. I wanted her hair so bad when I was in junior high. It's just not going to do that. I have burns from the iron, you know. Not pretty. I got my revenge in the 80s, though, when everybody was paying a lot of money for perms, and I didn't have to get one. Okay, so now that we know that our gold standard is 300 pixels per inch, okay, we can just set our scanner to 300 pixels per inch and call it good, right? Not quite. I wish it were that easy, but it's not quite. Okay, let's say here is a gorgeous picture of my dad's cousin, Mary Lou. And this is a pretty good sized portrait of her. 13 inches on this side. All right, if I scan this at 300 pixels per inch, so I got 300 pixels for every inch, that is going to give me a total of 3,900 pixels on the longest dimension. 3,900, that's pretty close to our 4,000 target. Okay, so I can scan this at 300 pixels per inch, and it's going to look great. And I probably wouldn't want to blow this one up too much bigger than that. But what happens if I have a little tiny print like this? We all have these, right? We've got prints that look like this. This is 2 inches on the longest side. If I scan this at 300 ppi, that's only 600 pixels. That's a far cry from our 4,000 target that we're going for. Which means that I could only ever print this as big as it is right here. If I wanted to print it any bigger, I'm going to need more pixels to do that. So I'm going to choose a higher resolution to print my little tiny, or to scan my tiny picture. And usually that would be probably from 600 to 1,200. So this is just a comparison. If I have a really small print, like 3 inches wide, or if I've got one that's, you know, about this size, or if I've got a big one here. All right, if I scan this at 300, I scan this one at 600, I scan this one at 1,200, each one of those scanned is going to have 3,600 pixels on the longest slide, which is pretty close to our target. So our goal is to get as close to about that 4,000 as you can. However, this photo right here, this photo has a lot of people in it, and it's got a high degree of detail. So we're probably going to want to scan this one higher, even if it's larger. We're going to scan this one larger than 300 pixels per inch, because, so you can see it better, even newspaper articles, that kind of thing. You're going to want to scan those at a higher resolution so that you'll get a better result at the end. Also, if you have genealogical documents like census records and those kind of documents, you want to scan those. You want to treat those as photos. Just pretend that it's a photo and you want an image of that. You don't want to scan that as a document. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we get to the file type section. So the rule of thumb is the smaller the photo or the more detail, the more pixels you need, so the higher you're going to set your PPI on your scanner. So why would we not just pick the highest number on our scanner, 2,400 pixels per inch, or some 4,800 pixels per inch? Why wouldn't we just pick that so that they'll all be big enough? Well, the problem is then if we have a bunch of things this size, we're going to end up with these huge, really slow files that are going to be difficult to work with. So you don't want to have too many pixels, because that can kind of interrupt your workflow a little bit. You can always get rid of pixels. You just can't make more. If you don't want to take the time to sit and decide, okay, I want this one at 300, and this one at 600, and this one at 1,200, say if you're sending them out to having them scanned, or if you've got a whole lot to do and you just need a set it and forget it setting, if you pick about 600 and 800 pixels, that's a good standard overall. Most of your images are going to be just about right. You might have some that are really tiny, that might be a little too small, and you might have some big ones that might be a little too big, but it's still in the same target range. So if you're going to scan them all at one resolution, this is probably good. If you have slides or negatives, 35 millimeter, that's a tiny surface area on that slide. So you need a lot more pixels. So you need at least 3,200 pixels per inch if you're scanning a slide or an original negative. Most flatbed scanners don't go up that high. Some of them do. And you have to do you have to use a special attachment to be able to scan those on a flatbed, and they're really slow. So my recommendation is if you have a lot of slides to scan or a lot of 35 millimeter negatives, that you send those out. How do I set the resolution on my scanner? This is tricky because every scanner is completely different and the settings are completely different, so we don't have time to tell you what all of those are. But one thing that's really important to know is that you don't want to use the default settings that come on your scanner if you can at all avoid it. Especially this little auto scan button. You see this on a lot of those all-in-one printer, scanner, copier deals. There's a scan button on the front. Anything that's called quick scan or home mode, you're going to have to dig into the actual software in your scanner and look a little deeper. Why don't you want to use this? Because the average default settings on a flatbed scanner is 75 to 150 dpi. Okay, so that's going to give you a smaller file than what you're really going to want for making your digital master. All right, it's just not nearly enough pixels to get us to that 4,000. So you really have to get into your scanner driver and find those settings to be able to set that. So you're going to look for something that says either advanced settings, advanced preferences. Epson has like a home mode and a professional mode, so you want to go into the professional mode. That's where you're going to find these settings to be able to set the DPI where you want it. And this is what it looks like here. You're going to look for something called output resolution. Anything that says resolution or DPI, that's probably it. And then this is where you'll choose whatever number on this that you want. Just a few general scanning tips. Have you ever seen the movie Multiplicity, where he's real busy, so he makes a clone of himself, and then the clone decides to make a clone of himself, and that's the guy in the back, and he's looking kind of ugly and scary there. So we don't want to scan a clone of a clone of a clone. You don't want to scan a photocopy if there's a real print available. So start with the closest to the original as you can. If you only have a photocopy and that's the only thing you have, go ahead and scan it anyway, because it's better than nothing. Okay, clean the dust off your scanner and off the print. Either use a cloth or air. You don't want to use those the canned air because that can spit liquid out on your photos. Also, when you're scanning, most flatbed scanners have little marquees, little boxes that you can draw around your images, and then it will scan all 6 of these at once. You don't want to just scan this whole page as one image, because first of all, you might want to go back in and just use one of those, but also you're going to get a smaller resolution that way. So generally you want to scan those individually, not the whole page at one time. Okay, everybody still with me? You're not just like completely overwhelmed? Okay. Smushy. He's the toughest little guy here. Smushy likes to get in and squish our photos. This is a factor that most people don't understand, that there even is such a thing as compression, okay? And therefore it causes the most problems in images creating digital images. I see images every single day that somebody sent to me that are have too much compression, and they don't look too good. So our pixel count means the number of pixels that we have in our whole photo, right? So I got 4,000 by 3,000 or so here in this picture. Compression refers to the quality or the density of those pixels and the amount of space that it takes up on your computer. Compression is something that is designed to make a file load faster, usually on a website, okay, and take up less space on your computer. Every type of digital photo uses some kind of compression. There's some that's better than others. If compression is done well, you will not be able to tell the difference between whether it's compressed or not. It'll still look good, but if compression is used too much and done wrongly, it can damage your photo. And the damage on that photo is called artifacts, not to be confused with the actual artifacts that we are trying to save and preserve. But that's the industry term for that damage that happens to a photo. Could I get a volunteer to come up and help me with something really quickly in a moment here? Anybody come on up? Okay, let's say that you have a friend who lives somewhere in you can just stand right down here. Let's say you have a friend who lives in a completely gluten-free community, right? Okay, so no bread available there at all. And she really wants some bread, so she asks you to send her some bread. So we can do one of two things. We can take the bread, we can put it in a nice box, treat it carefully, put some packing foam in there, and send it off to her. But we really need to find out what she wants to do with the bread. Okay, would you take this bread? Would you put it on the floor and just stand on it? Just smash it. Okay. Yep. Just go for it. Get out all your frustrations on that bread right now. Yeah, a little more. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Okay, thank you. Here, it's for your trouble. Thanks very much. Okay, see what happens when you volunteer, right? Good stuff. Okay, so this is what our bread looks now, almost two-dimensional bread. All right, we have the same number of breadcrumbs that we started with. However, yes, our breadcrumbs are now compressed, and we can put them in a FedEx envelope. Right? And it'll be there by 10:30 tomorrow morning. It's going to go a lot faster. Okay? So we still have the same number of pixels, but may not be quite as much quality as we started with. Okay. And I don't want you to think that compression is all bad, because it's necessary, but we just need to know how to use it and what kind to use. There's two different kinds of compression, one called lossless and one called lossy. And that's kind of just what it sounds like. The lossless one doesn't lose information. The lossy one gets rid of some information. What happens when you have a lossless, you start with an image, you close it, it compresses the image. When you reopen the image again, you get back everything that you started with. All of your data is still there. With lossy compression, you start with your image, the image is closed and compressed. When it's opened again, it's smaller, it's less dense, and it has some information missing. What this type of compression does is that it throws away some of the color data. It doesn't actually throw away your pixels. You still have the same number of breadcrumbs, but it's thrown away some of that important color data. If you do this just enough for your purposes, you can not even tell the difference to your naked eye. But if you do it too much, that's where the problems can start. Okay? Because once that slice of cake is gone, there's no way to get it back, short of rescanning it. Okay, this is kind of really abstract, so let's take a look at what this will actually look like in a photo. Okay, this is my high-resolution photo. I got my 4,000 pixels scanned with lossless compression. And compression, by the way, is determined by the file type, and we'll talk about file types in a minute. I've got really nice colors, sharp edges. I've got no compression artifacts here. This all looks really good and really smooth. This is what it looks like if I've also scanned with lossless compression, but I just don't have enough pixels for this purpose. This is 800 pixels wide, which is not really big enough to fill up the screen and look smooth. So I can see the individual pixels here on the edge. Can you see those little jagged looking things? Okay. What happens if I scan, I've got my high resolution photo, but I've scanned it with lossy compression at a high rate of compression, you can start to see some little bit of damage here in the photo. It's hard to see on this screen because this is a really big soft screen, but when you're printing it, you're really going to see this damage. You can see these kind of weird color shifts, color variations, and little pixelization, especially around the edges and in big blocks of colors, because it's thrown away some of the color data, and then when it opens it up, it tries to guess what it is and put some back. So you get some nasty surprises there. Okay. Okay, case in point. This is a photo. Her name is Sophronia Strobridge Cook. Can you? Yay! Okay, if you're related to her, if you have the original of this photo, I would really, really like to talk to you after we're done. I'm working on a book for a client. We found this great photo that somebody had uploaded to Family Search. Okay, and I'm all excited because this is what she looked like on the Family Search screen. She looks good on the screen. But when I zoom in, this is what it looks like. She's really blurry and pixelated. So, and this is likely happened because someone just stuck it on the glass and hit the auto scan button and made it very small. So Sophronia here has been attacked by both skimpy and smushy. All right, she doesn't have enough pixels, and the pixels that are there have been highly compressed. So how do we prevent this from happening to our photos? There's nothing that I can do to this photo to make it look better than what it looks like right now, unless I rescan the original. This is why the president of Google is concerned that we're going to be losing our history. So how do we keep this from happening? Okay. As I said earlier, the compression is determined by the type of file that you scan it as. All right. Lossless compression includes a TIFF. The most popular one is a TIFF. JPEG is a lossy compression. Now somebody came up to me today and said that when I said this, I made his wife cry because she had already scanned everything as JPEGs. Don't panic, okay? JPEG is a perfectly acceptable file format. You just need to know how to use it. But that's why I recommend that people use TIFF to scan their photos if you're going forward in scanning, because you don't have to worry about compression. It's easier and safer, and you don't have to worry about it. It does make a bigger file and takes up more room, more storage space. But it is the easiest way to avoid having problems. The next best highest is a high-quality JPEG that's been scanned at a low compression rate, equaling a high-quality rate. Now, this is likely what you're going to get back if you have your photos scanned by a professional scanning service. You know, you send them off somewhere and they send you back a scan. You're most likely going to get a JPEG. Professionals know how to scan it right, how to get a good JPEG, so that you won't be able to tell the difference between a TIFF and a high-quality JPEG. And as long as you're careful with that photo and you put it away and use that as your digital master, you'll be absolutely fine. So, but even if you do start with a high-quality JPEG, they can be damaged further, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Again, don't use your full auto settings on your scanner or the scan button. On some scanners, you can actually program these buttons. Okay. Some scanners, you can actually program the buttons for whatever quality settings you want. So if you can figure out how to do that, that's a handy thing that can save you some time. But just right out of the box, you're going to want to go and find those advanced settings and really work at finding that. And the compression settings are even harder to find in the software usually than the resolution settings. Okay? Why don't we want to use the default settings? Because usually they use a medium or standard compression quality setting, which is really not good enough for our digital master. Okay? So, and some scanners may vary. So there may be some out there now that automatically defaults to a high quality setting. For instance, a FlipPal. Anybody have a FlipPal in here? Okay. FlipPal does scan as a JPEG, and that's the only format that it does, but they use the very highest quality setting. So if you're using a FlipPal to do your scanning and it scans at 600 dpi, so you're probably going to be just fine. That's it. So you just have to look a little harder for those compression settings. Again, you're going to go to your advanced settings, look for professional mode. Okay. And it could be called anything in your scanner driver. It could be called JPEG compression. It could be called output quality, image quality options. Everyone is different, but you always want to just push that slider toward the highest or pick the highest number, or if it says, you know, standard, good, better, best, you always want to go for the best. So far, we've been talking about scanning, things that are already in an analog form that we're converting to digital. If you are capturing digital images, you can also control the resolution and sometimes the compression on your digital device. So you want to make sure that when you're capturing important images with the digital camera, that your camera or your phone camera is set to the highest resolution and the best compression that you can. Okay, this is just a Canon DSLR. Most cell phones, by the way, you can control the amount of pixels, and usually they default to the highest, not always. So check your phone to see what its settings are. But you usually can't control the compression, but the compression settings are pretty good. They're not too bad on your average high-quality cell phone. Okay, so how do you know then if you have an image that you got from somewhere else and you don't know how it was scanned, you don't know how much it's been compressed? How do you know if it's a good quality or not? So this is one way that you can find out, and I hope you can. This is hard to read because this was a screenshot from my Windows file info on my computer, so it's a little fuzzy. But I have 3 versions of my mom's photo here. I've got a high-quality TIFF, I've got a high-quality JPEG, and then I have a compressed JPEG. They all look fine on the screen, don't they? You know, I mean, they all look pretty much the same. And if I look at, see here where it says dimensions on all 3 of these, they all have the same pixel count. They have the same number of pixels. Each one is about 4,700 pixels wide. However, this thing here that says size, the file size in your file info on a digital image is what determines the density and how much space that file takes up on your computer, not necessarily how many pixels it has. So all 3 of these images have exactly the same number of pixels, but they're radically different sizes. This image is 63, the TIFF is 63 megs, and the JPEG is 25, and the super compressed JPEG is less than 1 megabyte. So if you see an image on your, if you download one from Family Search and you look at it and you see what the file size is in your file info and it's less than 1 megabyte, it's probably going to be too small for you to do anything other than look at it about this big on a computer screen. Okay, just another way to show this. All right, these are all the same resolution. You can see in the compressed JPEG, you can see that some of the damage to her face here and some of this blockiness. All right, less than 1 megabyte. So that's one way you can tell. So because the TIFF and the JPEG, I mean, that's a lot of space that you're saving. Okay, so why not just scan everything as a high-quality JPEG? You certainly can, and that is an option as long as you get the highest quality setting, and it will save you a lot of space. So that's not a bad option. However, storage is really cheap now. It didn't used to be. Back in 1995, I had a flash media drive that went into an early digital camera that I had. It cost $500. It was 500 megapixels. I was really, really sad when I left it in the pocket of my jeans and it went through the wash. So this tip of my mom would have cost me $63 to store that on this Flash Media back in 1995. Right now, average 16 megabyte hard drive is about $6, and the prices are coming down. So that image cost me about 2 cents. There's a lot of cloud storage options out there that give you free storage now. So if you can scan as TIFFs, you might as well, and if you have the room. All right, if you have high quality JPEGs or any JPEGs and you want to keep them as good as they can be, you just want to make sure that you don't open a JPEG, edit it, and then save it. Because if every time that you do that, it compresses the file further. And if you do it enough times, you will start seeing the artifact damage on your photo. Now, you can open a JPEG, look at it, and close it as many times as you want, and that will not compress the photo. But if you open it, and if you change even 1 pixel, if you, darken the sky, or if you color correct it, or if you, erase somebody's mustache or something, and you do that several times, you're going to end up with a degraded JPEG. So if you have a JPEG, you want to make sure that you take the original highest quality JPEG that you have, your original scan, or your original digital file that comes off of your camera in its high resolution. You want to put that in your safe storage, and then you want to make a copy of that to do your editing on. And then you can always, if something goes wrong, you can always go back to that original and make another copy, and you won't have damaged your original file. Okay?
So making copies does not degrade anything?
Making copy of a JPEG does not degrade that image. You can make as many copies as you want. That's the nice thing about digital images. When you used to, like you would start with a film, like a home movie from a 8mm film or something, and then later on you would convert it to a VHS, right? And then that VHS, you would then convert that to a CD or DVD. And then you take, and every time you did that, you would lose a lot of quality. But now if you start with a high quality digital film or a digital photograph, you can copy it as many times as you want, and you're not going to lose any quality. But where you have problems with the JPEGs is just if you're editing and re-editing and working with that file over and over, it will compress the image. Does that make sense to everybody? It's a really hard concept to get your mind around, so I'm trying to make it as easy as possible, okay? And just a reminder, once that damage has occurred, or once those pixels are gone, you cannot get them back. You can actually I'm going to have to take questions at the end because we don't really have time to stop, but I will get to your questions. You can actually add pixels in Photoshop if you want to. I mean, you can go in and do that. However, it's kind of like adding water to a soup. You'll have more soup, you can feed more people, but it won't taste as good. You're not actually adding any quality to it. So this is the part that I want you to either write down, or this is also on your crib sheet. It's also in the free ebook, but these are the main things. If you remember nothing else from this entire presentation, and you probably won't, these are the things to remember. If you can, scan as a TIFF. Prints, 600 to 800 DPI is a good standard. Slides, at least 3200. And don't use the auto scan settings, the default settings on your scanner, unless, check those out and make sure what they are. Use your scanner driver to set those settings. And you can always come to our website, and all of this information is also on there in great detail. Okay? So if you follow these rules, or even if you have done your high-quality JPEGs, you're going to be just fine. And pretty much you'll be able to use those scans for any purpose that you would ever need to. And if they are properly saved and shared, those images will last into the future. Okay. Can I use my phone as a scanner? There's a lot of apps out there, a lot of ways to do this. Some of them are good, and some of them are bad. These are some pictures of my two of my ancestors that some lovely person, bless his or her heart, took these pictures and uploaded them to Family Search, where I found them. And I'm really glad to have these because otherwise I wouldn't know who these people look like. However, it's pretty easy to do a lot better than this. And I'm going to show you just a really simple way to just use your phone. You don't need any special app to do this. You just, first of all, you want to make sure that your phone camera is at the highest resolution setting, which most of them default to that. Turn off your flash. That's probably the most important thing. Just put the image on a chair up against a window. I like to use those little magnets on the corners, especially if they bend at all. You can put a magnet either on a magnet board or on a cookie sheet even. And then you want to get as close as you can to the camera, and you want to hold the camera on an even plane with the photo. And just click. This is I did a kind of a comparison between these two photos, one on my flatbed and one with my phone. And you know, the phone one's not quite as good, but it's pretty good. The nice thing about this is that if you are traveling somewhere, like if you go to visit your Aunt Mary and you only have like 2 hours with her and she's got a whole bunch of photos, but she won't let you take them with you to take them home and scan them on your flatbed, this is a good second best way to do it. If you have a flatbed scanner, I would recommend doing that to create your digital masters. But the phone can be a good option. I wanted to warn you about this particular scanning app. There are a lot of scanning apps out there. You want to make sure that if you're using a scanning app, that it uses the native resolution and native compression settings of your phone, and it's not messing with your photos further. With this, the Google Photo Scan app, what it does is you take the photo 4 times with the flash on, and then it takes those 4 pictures and it merges them together to try to get rid of the glare that you've created by using the flash. Yeah. So this is not to be confused with Google Photos, which is their storage option, and that can be really good for some use as a good backup. This is totally separate. This is the Google Photo Scan app that you put on your phone. So don't confuse the two. I just did a trial here with a couple of family photos. You can see this is a difference between even my high quality JPEG here and what the Photo Scan app. First of all, I got a file that was much smaller in pixels than my phone's native resolution. It threw a bunch of those pixels away, and it compressed the other ones. You can see that it's gotten rid of a lot of the detail here. It's even worse on a detailed photo. There's this lady over here who, she had a little piece of dust on her eye over here, which I could take out in Photoshop, but this, like, her whole eye is just a big black dot now. It's just obliterated her eyeball. This is a picture of my dad with his 3 sisters. So I wanted to get in, do a close crop and see what that looked like. So this is my flatbed, just my phone camera with regular window light. This is the Google Photo Scan, what came out of there. You can see, not only can you see these compression artifacts in here, but also it's completely distorted the shape of his face. It's completely changed it, yeah, and the color is, whatever color was there is now gone. So I was trying to figure out, he reminds me of somebody. I just couldn't figure it out. So finally figured it out. If you're under 40, you have no idea what I'm talking about. It's okay. Trust me, if you don't want your dad to look weird, don't use the Google Photo app. So there are some other good scanning apps out there. There's one that's actually in a booth right next to us called Joy Flips. And they have kind of a cool thing where it uses your camera's native resolution, it doesn't mess with it at all, and then it uploads it to their cloud storage and removes it from your phone but leaves a thumbnail of it in the app. And I know there are lots of other ones out there. Just make sure that it's not going to do this to your photos. Okay, now we're going to get to the rest of our little friends here. File formats, we talked about these already. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, because there are a lot of different file formats. Most of them you may never even run into. What you need to know is really these are the only file formats that you want to be scanning in, either a TIFF or a JPEG. PDF, a lot of those all-in-one scanners, they're set to scan PDFs as the default setting. This is because most of those scanners, they're for people in offices that want to scan tax documents, okay, not photographs. It doesn't mean that the scanner on that device is a bad scanner. It's probably perfectly adequate if you have it set correctly. But the only thing you want to scan as a PDF are text-only documents, and especially if they're multi-pages. Like if you're scanning a whole book, PDF might be a really good file format to use. Anything else, genealogical records, any kind of photos, you want to scan those as photos using either TIFF or JPEG. Okay? Just some others you might run into. Ping, you see these a lot. Ping is a high-quality, lossless file that uses transparency. You see these a lot in logos. Like if you need a logo to go on a colored background on a website, they can be loaded to a website or printed. So it's a good file format. You just don't want to scan your original as a ping. And Photoshop, you can use layers and also do transparency with that. Okay. GIFs, generally used for animation and web stuff, so you don't want to scan your photos as a GIF ever. They all have their uses, but you want to either scan as a TIFF or a JPEG. Incognito. I'm sure you all have photos that you have no idea who they are, right? You know it's somebody in your family, but you have no clue. This is actually, that's my granddad in the middle there, sporting the awesome beard. He'd fit right at home in my neighborhood. I have no idea who these other guys are around him or why they're in shirts and ties in the middle of a forest. I would love to know that, but nobody wrote anything on the back of the photo. Okay? I love this lady and I want her shoes. Seriously, it's like the third time these shoes have come around since 1945. I had those shoes in high school and they're coming back again, but no idea who she was. She's gorgeous, but no clue, because nobody wrote on the back. So how do you write on the back of a digital photo? The answer to that is metadata. There's a couple of other classes here at the conference about metadata. It's easy to do. It's just really hard to explain, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. So I'm not going to cover it today. However, my last year's presentation, which is still up on the RootsTech website, covers this in great detail. And I also have blog posts that talk about this and give instructions. Metadata is user-editable information that you can add like captions and dates and contact information, email, that will travel with the photo when you share it or send it somewhere. So you got the photo here, and the metadata kind of rides along in a little digital sidecar. So it's a really useful thing to know how to use. Okay. This little guy, I think he's the most heartbreaking one. His name is Poof, and he likes to make things disappear. Okay. Yeah, so painful. I think probably everybody in this room has experienced that one time or another. The standard kind of rule of thumb for storage is you want to have 3 sources of storage. It's called the 3-2-1 rule, and this goes across all industries. The 3-2-1 rule, you want to have 3 different sources of backup of every file you have, 2 on hard storage media, preferably 2 different kinds of media, maybe an external drive and a flash drive or a disk, and 1 offsite. That would either be cloud storage, or if you're kind of paranoid about putting anything in the cloud, put it in a safe deposit box at the bank. If you follow this method, if something goes wrong with one, you will always have another option. Also, you need to have a system for organizing your photos. And we don't have time to get into that today. I've got several articles on the blog about different ways to do this. This is just how I organize my genealogy photos that corresponds with my pedigree chart colors. So there's a blog on this about that as well. And it doesn't really matter what kind of system you use as long as it makes sense to you and you know where to find things. Just a few backup options. There are a number of cloud storage options out there. Google Photos is a good backup for your phone. It will automatically back up everything that you take on your phone. However, if you're using the free version of Google Photos, it does make that file smaller. It will give you a smaller resolution file that it saved than what comes natively out of your camera. So if you're taking photos on your camera that are important, you also want to download those to another form of storage. The paid Google Photos version, you can upload whatever you want at, and it will keep the original resolution. Amazon Prime, if you have an Amazon Prime account, you get free unlimited photo backup, and it's at the original resolution. Did anybody know that, not know that? Because I didn't until about like 2 months ago, so I started using that. Dropbox, and any of those cloud storage options, except for Google Photos, but most of the main ones will upload, whatever you upload, it'll keep your original resolution. So when you download it again or share it with someone else and they download it, it will not lose any quality or resolution. Okay, including Family Search, by the way. And Family Search has a 15 megabyte file limit. They do accept TIFF files, but if you have a TIFF file that's bigger than that, you can make a JPEG copy and upload that to Family Search. Okay, social media, we all love it, we use it. However, if the only place that your photos live is on Facebook, that's not a good option. Okay, it's going to shrink your photo, it compresses it, and it strips out the metadata. So if you're one of those cute moms who chronicles the entire life of your family on Instagram, you just want to make sure that you're also backing up those photos in somewhere else other than Instagram, or things could go terribly wrong. Okay, incorrect transfer. I named this guy Luggage because he kind of got damaged in transit there. It kind of looks like a suitcase when it comes off the airplane, right? Okay, and this happens generally when you're sharing a photo to someone else. It's not as big a deal because it doesn't really affect your photo. You know, your high-resolution photo will still be okay, but sometimes when you send it to someone else, if they want to do something with it, a lot of email clients will automatically assume that if you're sending someone a photo, that they're just going to want to look at it on their screen or do something digital with it, and so it shrinks it down. So what they get is going to be much smaller. So you have to go into your email client and learn how to set the resolution to keep the resolution of the phone. Screenshots. Like I will ask someone to send me a photo of themselves to go in their mom's book or something. And so they'll take a selfie, which is great, no problem with the selfie, but then instead of sending me the original photo off their phone, they take a screenshot of the selfie and text it to me. And so then I end up with this little tiny file that is not printable. So just be something to be aware of when you're sharing your photos with others. All right. One really good way to share a photo is if you're using cloud storage, you can send someone a link to that photo in your cloud storage, and then they can download your photo from your cloud storage account, and what they will get will be the same resolution that you uploaded to your cloud storage. Okay, this is our last little guy here. His name is Piggy, and Piggy doesn't like to share. Now that we've gone through all the trouble of scanning these photos, we want to make sure that other people have access to them. And also, the more copies of your photos that are out there, the safer those photos are going to be. So if something happens to yours, you know someone else has got it and it's stored somewhere else. The more we share these, the more chance that these images will have to last into the future. I found this cute little picture at my dad's house just recently. And I was like, oh, I love this picture. My dad said, that's so cute. Who's that little girl? And I said, it's Grandpa Wood. It's like, that's not Grandpa Wood, he's wearing a dress. And I said, well, in 1899, when he was born, they put little boys in dresses back then. So, but he's still like, how do you know that's Grandpa Wood? And I said, that's how I know it's Grandpa Wood. I would know that smile anywhere. My grandpa always used to say, what goes around comes around. So be generous with your photos, all right? Be generous, share them with other people, and that's going to come back to you. You'll find other photos that you want that people have shared. Share it up to Family Search, Ancestry, Cloud Storage, whatever it is. And also, don't forget books as well. Books are never going to go away completely. They're never going to go out of style. There will always be people engaging in books. This is a client of mine who, her little kids were being really quiet one day, and she was getting nervous, so she went down to see what they were doing, and they were looking at their grandfather's history book. So you can also create an index of your digital files, just thumbnails, to go along with the digital files that, you know, it's a nice gift for your family. The last thing I want to say is if you get really overwhelmed by all this technology and it's just too much for you, don't be afraid to get help to do this. There are professionals that can help you, missionaries at the Family History Library. They will scan your photos for free. They have every type of scanning equipment, and they know what they're doing. They're trained well, so you'll get good quality files, and it's a wonderful service. And if worse comes to worse, you can always ask your grandchildren for help, because they just like are bored knowing this stuff. That's my grandson Henry, by the way. He insisted I wear a hat to work that day. Okay, so if you have any further questions, come and see us. We're right next to the Media Hub, booth 225. Thank you so much. There's 5 minutes left. Thank you. We have 5 minutes left for questions. So, yes, this lady right here.
How do you change a file format?
Okay, she's asking how do you change a file format, like from a TIFF to a JPEG or vice versa? First of all, the only reason that you would want to ever change a TIFF, to change a JPEG to a TIFF is if you're going to edit it. If you're going to, do some stuff and mess around with it. Just taking a high quality JPEG and making it into a TIFF file so that you have a bigger master, it's not going to give you any more quality. It's just going to take up more space. So that's not necessary. So you can do that. You need some sort of photo editing software like Photoshop or anything like that. You can do a save as. So you'll just open the photo and you'll just say, open your TIFF, save as a JPEG, and then you can do that. Okay, yes? Oh, that's a subject for a whole other hour. She says, what do you do once you digitize everything? What do you do with all the physical stuff that you have left over? Yeah, okay, so a lot of that has to do with your own personal comfort level. And there's some other really good classes here about that, so if you're concerned with that, you might want to check out some of these other classes. I tend to think that if you've got like genealogy records that are like, your great aunt's old pedigree charts and family group sheets that are in those big book of remembrance binders, and if all that information is already in Family Search, it's already on the internet, and it's already there somewhere, I think it's probably okay to chuck those. But if you have really valuable photos, and I know some people are going to disagree with me on that, so we don't have time for the whole debate. But I think it's up to you with what you keep. If you have duplicates of stuff, feel free to let some of those go. I have a higher level of comfort with letting things go once I know that I have a really high quality digital image. But it's a heartbreaking thing too when someone comes to me and they bring me these really small little compressed JPEGs and I say, I scanned all of my photos and then I got rid of all the originals, and you just go, oh no, okay? So it's kind of a personal thing. You do want to make sure that whatever you have left that you were saving, that you store it properly in acid-free archival storage boxes, and that you put it, up off the floor in your basement in case there's a flood. You want to take care of those originals as well. Okay, yes, over there. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Okay, he's asking, does rotating a JPEG deteriorate the quality of the JPEG? I'm not quite sure, because I've heard people say yes, it does, and I've heard other people, experts disagree on that. I have never had a problem with opening a JPEG and just rotating it, like if the scanner makes it one way and you just want to rotate it 45 degrees, and if that's the only editing that you're doing on it, you'll probably be fine. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, right here.
So storage digitally, how long does that last?
She's asking how long digital storage will last. Okay. Let me put on my psychic's hat here. The answer is, nobody really quite knows. DVDs only have most types of DVDs only have a certain lifespan. Eventually they're going to fade. So you always want to make sure that for your storage options, that you are keeping up with the latest technology. The good news, again, though, about digital files is that if you're just moving something from one storage to a new technology of storage, you're not going to lose quality. You're still going to be okay. So, but just kind of make sure that you're keeping up with technology. Cloud storage, on the other hand, if you've got your stuff uploaded to Dropbox, it's not going to fade over time. It's still going to be as good 10 years from now, assuming that Dropbox is still in business. That's the problem with cloud storage. You want to make sure that you pick a reputable company and that it's not, and that hopefully no one's messing with your data. So, yes, over here.
If I open a file in Adobe Bridge and edit the metadata, will it compress the image at all?
No. That's a very good question, thank you. She says, if I open a file in Adobe Bridge or something that is going to allow me to add the metadata to the photo to put in my captions, and then I close that file, that will not compress the photo, okay? Your photo will still be saved. Okay, we are out of time. Thank you very much. Come to our booth if you have any further questions.